everyone. I'm Barbara Beck, and I'm so glad you tuned in today to Welcome Home. We have a special program based on some great feedback from you, our viewers. We found that many of our one-hour Welcome Home shows had life-changing interviews that deserve to be heard again. So what we decided to do was to shorten the show into a 30-minute life-changing stories abbreviated version of Welcome Home, really focusing on the person's story and ways Christ has worked in and through their unique circumstances. You see, our heart here at Good Life 45 is to share Christ in compelling ways through life-changing stories. Every one of us has our own individual journey, our story to tell. And when we find people who are extra inspiring, we want to spotlight those. So sit back and enjoy this story. You might have heard it before, and if so, this just might be the time to call up a friend or a loved one to be sure that they hear it also. And you'll enjoy it again too, I feel certain. This is a life-changing story. Trusting God in challenging times. That's been our theme for today. And so we have with us on Welcome Home somebody that I know and love, and she's become a really close sister in Christ with me. And I know that you've seen her many, many times on Welcome Home doing her great cloud of witnesses, historical figures, and she does a lot of research, and she's really a godly woman with incredible talents, and she's going to tell you a little bit more about her story. So I'm excited today and blessed and super honored to have with us on Welcome Home Chris Ebert. Hi, Chris.
Hi, Barbara.
I'm so glad you're here with us today.
I'm so glad to be here, truly, in so many ways.
Well, remind me and remind our viewers how we came to know each other. It was 2 years ago, right?
It was, yeah, a little over 2 years ago, and you were, actually, it was almost 3 years ago, believe it or not. I know, I can't believe that either. That's, you know, that time thing just keeps trucking along.
That's right.
About 3.5 years ago, I'd been given a diagnosis of stage 4 breast cancer. And you were coming to Titusville to speak at the retreat center and at Park Avenue Baptist Church.
Right.
And because the diagnosis was so new, it was kind of the buzz of the town. And our community's small and very close. And so I didn't want it to overshadow what was going on with you, so I called you on the phone and just to kind of let you know, and we kind of connected there.
I remember that phone call because you called and said that you were the MC at the event. I was the keynote speaker, and viewers, Chris said to me, she said, I just don't want to take anything away from your thunder, and I certainly don't want me to be the focus, meaning her to be the focus of the retreat. And I'm like, Jesus is the focus of the retreat anyway. And okay, you have stage 4 breast cancer, but you know, you were so great about telling me that ahead of time because it was very humbling of you, and it really made me say, gosh, who is this woman? And I want to get to know her. And I've told our viewers this before. I have a very busy life, as you do as well. And I don't oftentimes have the time to pursue a friendship. And I wanted to pursue a friendship with you because I saw something so different in you, Chris, that really drew me to you. Maybe it was Jesus. I don't know what it was about you, but there was something about you that made me want to come after you. So we started walking together. You would drive over from Titusville, and we'd take these long, wonderful walks together.
Well, and it's been such a gift for me too, our friendship. It's just been really, really great. And I really struggled with whether or not to even say anything to you, but I thought, well, if I don't want to have you get there and be the only one not in the know.
Exactly.
You know,
well, when you got this diagnosis, Chris, it's stage 4 is a pretty serious diagnosis.
That's a rough diagnosis.
And they told you, did they give you a life expectancy at that time?
2 of the first doctors with whom I connected, the first doctor told me, you might have a year, but I really don't think so. And the second one kind of verified that and basically told me that it didn't matter what I did, that there wasn't anything I could really do, which is a little ominous. You're thinking, okay. And so the first doctor, I said to him, I said, well, respectfully, that's just not your position to say that. I said, you know, I just don't receive that report. And of course, then they think you're in denial, and or they kind of look and go, no, it's affecting her mind, you know. But it is a rather ominous report. I think I was so covered in prayer and so blanketed. Just God gives us grace in certain situations when we're going through stuff that you know, you get into that situation and the Lord just knows ahead of time to cradle you and give you His grace.
Well, you were the picture of grace.
Yeah, well,
you really were. And I know that
amazing.
They told you no chemotherapy because you were too far gone.
Well, what
right?
a lot of people don't realize about stage 4 breast cancer, when you first hear the term stage 4 breast cancer, a lot of folks don't know what that means. What that basically means, most folks have stage 1, 2, or 3 in the diagnosis of breast cancer. And so they're going to go at it just as strongly as they can. They do
Sure.
chemo and radiation, and we don't want this to move from the breast to other parts of the body. So they're very aggressive depending on the level of the report.
Right.
Once it's stage 4, that means that it was in the breast tissues, but now it's spread to another part of the body. And with breast cancer, it's usually spread to the bone or the lungs. Sometimes can go to the intestines, soft tissue liver, things like this, which are really ungood.
Yeah.
I think that's a scientific term.
That's a very nice word, yes.
And so anyway, so stage 4 means that the horse is already out of the barn. Why burn the barn down?
Right.
So, or
no
rats
mastectomy,
or whatever.
no chemotherapy, no radiation. But you're not willing to receive that diagnosis.
Well,
you're going to fight. Right?
In a sense, you know, it's an interesting term, fighting. How do you do that? How do you study for a blood test, you know?
Right.
But once it's been diagnosed stage 4, then they put you in what they call palliative care, which means it's almost like you feel they're patting you on the head and saying, well, let's make her as comfortable as possible for as long as possible. And certainly when I first, it's also called metastatic because it's metastasized from this location to other parts. The report I received was that it had metastasized throughout the bones of the spine. So that's a little ominous, right?
Does that make you have a backache right away?
Yeah,
You start going,
exactly.
oh, wait, what was that little twinge in my back? Right?
It's really funny. You're absolutely right. It's kind of like when we went horseback riding and you ride into this spider web and you think, okay, I know that spider's here somewhere, right? You know, even if for days afterwards we were all feeling
you
that
would
spider.
feel the spiders on you, yes.
Right. So, so I think, and so, but you're treated a little bit differently. It becomes, how do we manage this situation, or how do we try to either starve out the abnormal cells or manage the situation, or how do we make you more comfortable? There is no medical cure for stage 4 breast cancer. Metastatic breast cancer has killed, it's the only one of the breast cancers that will actually take someone's life. And over 40,000 women a year since 1989 have died from stage 4 breast cancer.
Now, you don't know all this right away when they're giving you that diagnosis. So
you're clueless. In fact, you know, my sense of humor is kind of off.
It's great. You have a great sense of humor. I love laughing with you.
It's really sad.
No, I love it.
And so my oncologist, who I just have to tell you about, Dr. Beck at University of Florida Health Cancer Center. She is the most professional, brilliant, and certainly patient with this patient oncologist, and she's just been terrific, and she's a godsend, literally. And so anyway, she calls me on the phone to let me know what the reports are, coming in, and she says, I'm on my cell phone, and she said, I'm really sorry, Chris. She said the report's stage 4. And my first thought truly was I was going to drop the cell phone like on the floor, like I had passed out or something, so that she'd be going, Chris, wait.
That was quick, right?
So, So, maybe it's that warped sense of humor. But when you hear these things, the first thing that comes to your mind if you're not careful is, oh no, it can be very fearful.
Sure.
We can get really afraid of what might be coming down the pipe. Fear of loss of control.
Yes.
I lost my job immediately.
Well, tell everybody what you did.
Okay. I was a pilot for a major airline in the United States, and I was a reserve pilot for the Air Force. And as soon as they wrote breast cancer, even before the stage 4 diagnosis, the FAA pulled my medical certification.
And even if it had been curable, stage 1, they still would have pulled you.
They would have pulled it until I was cleared.
Okay.
But because of the stage 4 diagnosis and medically, the medical community will never say you're cured, okay? Because there's no cure. And
so how did that make you feel when you, I mean, a lot of your identity, not all, because obviously
but
you're
a lot,
a Christian,
certainly,
but
certainly.
a lot of your identity is
And I
tied
had
up in being a very, very successful airline pilot.
Yeah,
right?
I mean, I was
And
so
it's
blessed.
gone.
God had really blessed me with that, and I had worked for that for many years and done a lot of, and love flying. I mean, talk to a pilot, and they'll just bore you to tears with the airplane stories. But yeah, I think God's grace just really came in.
Yes.
You know, that love of Christ was, I was very, very thankful. I was overwhelmed thankful with everything that He's given me in my life. You know, when somebody says to you, you might not have a year, you know, that's true of all of us.
Yeah,
that is so true of all of us.
Right.
And yet we get so busy with stuff. We think, oh, well, I've got this to do and that to do and this, and our priorities get kind of turned backwards on themselves. And so it's really, it can be a blessing in the midst of this.
Well, I've heard that before, Chris. I've heard people say, and I've heard you say, that sometimes it's like a gift that God's given you to really cherish each day. You know, we talked about that one time when we were walking, and I think, viewers, I've actually told you this before. When Chris and I would take long walks together, she has her Father's eyes. She has that song that talks about my Father's eyes. You see things that I don't see. You would pick up the little caterpillar, or you would look at a petal of a flower and say, Barbara, did you see that? And I don't see things like you see them. So in a way, you have a gift that I don't have, but because I want to be around you, I can share a little bit in that gift.
And likewise, you know, there are things you see in people and you bring to my attention that I won't say. I think that's why the body of Christ is so important to one another. You know, we need each other so much. And when we're going through some of these difficult times in particular, that somebody is there to lift us up, to encourage us, to bring us to the Father, to pray with and for us. And you know, it's really interesting. I've been more and more aware that we have spiritual eyes also, and we have physical eyes. You know, and somebody said to me last week, you know, we live at sea level. You know, but we live at sea level. A lot of us are just looking in the physical. What's going on in the physical? And what's really dangerous about a stage 4 breast cancer report, or any chronic disease, or any serious situation, it can be any one of a number of traumas, is that if we're not careful, it can take our eyes off the Father. It can take our eyes off of what's really important going on in the day-to-day. So I start, oh, how much is this going to cost me? I mean, you know, cancer care can be very expensive, you know.
And what am I going to eat, and how am I going to change my diet? And you've been really good about that, and really disciplined.
What if I get into a situation I can't handle? What if there's pain? What if Right?
What
that
if,
land of what if. Okay?
So that's why this particular theme of the show, we didn't want to just focus on cancer. We wanted to focus on trusting God in the challenging times. And I know that it's got to be a process and a journey. I can't imagine that the second Dr. Maroos gave you that diagnosis, that you said, okay, I'm going to trust God. This is a challenging time, and I'm ready to trust. Right?
I mean,
did you do that right away?
Okay, maybe it took a little bit.
A little bit longer?
You know, your heart kind of goes.
Sure.
And you don't really understand the situation. You don't even understand the words, right? So,
well, let me ask you this.
We get on the internet,
and you start doing your research.
Researching books, and they have a wonderful library, and a librarian over there that just is so good.
At the hospital?
At the hospital.
Okay.
And
what about anger, Chris? Was there any anger when you first heard the diagnosis, or maybe even weeks down the road, you never experienced anger?
I really didn't struggle with that. I know people that have struggled with that.
Sure.
I never said, why me? I never was angry about, I mean, God has given me so much in my life. I mean, truly, truly has. And so for me, I woke up the next morning, I know this sounds a little, you know, hard to believe, but kind of a Rebecca Sunnybrook farm, but I woke up the next morning and I talked to the Lord in the shower a lot, you know. He and I do a lot of talking in the shower. And that's the only place he lets me sing too, by the way. But but it was so good. I stepped out of the shower that day, and I was so overwhelmed with, Lord, you've done so much in my life,
Wow.
and you've healed so much, and you've given me this joy. I did not used to be a very joy-filled person.
Really?
I really didn't.
See, I've only known you as a cancer patient or a cancer survivor, so I've only seen the joy in you.
But Jesus began to put the joy in me
Wow.
when I met him.
Wow.
And he told me, I created you. I love you. It was my choice to make you, and to make you just the way you are. Now, did God give me breast cancer? No.
Right.
No. We're living in a fallen world.
Right.
This is a physical situation. We're,
Can God heal you of breast cancer?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I'm asking him to do so.
Sure.
But, early on, I was reading in the book of Daniel, and the guys in the book of Daniel and his buddies, look at the king and the king's men, and they said, hey, look, they're about to be thrown into the barbecue pit. We're going to throw you into the fire, right? And Daniel looks straight into the guy's eyes and says, my God can deliver me from those flames. But even if he doesn't, I'm not bowing any other place. He's the only game in town. He's it. And, we have that promise of, I've got you. I've got you. He tells us over and over and over again, look at the lilies of the field. They're not working hard. They're not trying to ramp up a certain amount of faith in order to throw a switch or pray the right prayer or be, God's got me. He wants me to come to him and ask him for what I need. But the trust is, he is a loving father. He's a good father. He's not going to give me anything I can't handle, and he's not giving me anything that he's not going to be right there in the middle of. So why am I going through this? I don't have the foggiest idea. But I was listening to Johnny Erickson Tata yesterday morning, and she said, why not me?
Wow.
And I thought, now here's a woman that's been praying to be healed. She's a quadriplegic. She's been praying to be healed, and yet God has used the situation she's in to glorify himself. Jesus looks at the crowd one day when he's on the pavilion, and he says, this sickness is not unto death, but to bring glory to God, that the Son of Man might be glorified in this. Is that because of the physical situation? No, it's so that God can bring glory through us, no matter where we're at.
Tell us, Chris, what got you to the point? There had to be many, many years of your walking closely with the Lord to get you to that kind of spiritual maturity where you could trust God in that challenging time. And from these 3 years that you've been given, which are a gift. But what about all those years? What led you to that point?
That's a great question. I think for me, I began to see that just like we interact with the world physically, where we read each other's body language, or we see things, or we look at that butterfly or whatever, right?
Right?
We interact with the world, and we see what's going on in the world around us with our physical eyes. I really believe that when we ask Christ in our hearts to come in and be Lord and Savior of our lives, that he gives us spiritual eyes, and we need to exercise those. When I was 3 and 4 and 5 years old, I didn't see with the same physical eyes that I see now. We have to grow into that. And the more time that I spend with the Father, the more time that I'm in that intimate prayer time with him and listening to him, he begins to open those spiritual eyes and to teach me, oh, hey, did you see this? Did you see what I did there? To keep a prayer journal even, so that we can, I know you do that, and aren't you amazed sometimes when you go back and you go, well, God, you knew what you were doing all along.
Why was I ever even concerned or worried? I do that a lot,
and
too.
Listen, I'm a control freak.
Yeah.
So
you have to be if you're going to be an airline pilot, right? You're in control.
Yeah. I don't know if I chose the job or the job chose me. But,
right.
But type A personalities, I think it's even harder for us. But when you get into a situation where you absolutely have no control whatsoever, you do have a choice to make.
Sure.
You can disappear in that fear world. But what I read Larry Burkett's book, Nothing to Fear, and I did one of the Great Cloud episodes on Larry, and I might do another. Fear is the enemy's territory. It's not God's territory. We're not supposed to be there, right?
Right.
You know, we've crossed lines. And I think one of the real dangers of breast cancer or whatever a person's facing is to step into that fear where we're not really trusting God. Now, that's not to beat somebody up, because have I had some fearful moments?
Well, that's what you asked me to pray for you.
Right.
You said, Barbara, you don't
Absolutely.
have to pray for my healing, but pray that I won't be fearful through the
Right.
journey.
Let me trust Him.
Yeah.
Let me open those spiritual eyes. And Lord, I don't understand, but I trust you.
Yeah.
You know, yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death.
Yeah.
You know, you're with me. You're right here. And it's been really, really neat. There's so many people at the Cancer Center, University of Florida Health Cancer Center, they are wonderful people, just that are there and caring and helping. But what's really interesting is I've come to realize that two things. One, cancer is not the big C. Christ is the big C.
That's right.
And two, cancer's not the enemy either. The enemy's the enemy. You know, Satan tries to muddy up the water and get us all worried about these backwater eddies and the what ifs, 90% or 95% of which never really come about to begin with. When we really, the verse doesn't say, thou wilt keep in perfect peace whose mind is stayed on breast cancer.
Yeah.
It doesn't read like that,
Right.
you know? So how do I keep in that peace? Constantly going back to Him and saying, Father, I'm really scared. Would you help me be less scared?
Yeah.
You know?
See, you don't come across to us as being afraid, and you don't come across to me as ever lacking trust. And so for you to be able to sit there and to tell our viewers that
I have
sure,
moments.
there
Sure.
are moments like
Sure.
that. But it all goes back to intimacy with the Father.
Absolutely.
Spending time with Him.
Absolutely. It's so important, because you can't trust somebody you don't know.
Yeah.
That just doesn't make sense. If I go out on the street and somebody comes up to me and says, "Hey, will you write me a check for $500?" Well, unless the Holy Spirit is speaking in the back of my mind, yeah, do that.
Probably not
okay?
going to happen.
It's probably not going to happen. If you ask me for a check, I'm going to write it out. In fact,
why didn't you tell me that earlier? I didn't
I'm
know
telling
you were willing.
I don't think I have my checkbook with me. But I'd probably write it for more, right?
Exactly.
Because I know you, because
Right.
we've interacted, we've gotten to know each other.
There's trust.
There's trust that's built, and the only way we can really build that trust
Spending time
is
together.
spending time
That's
together.
right.
And
That's right.
so, you know, that's just so monstrously important. And
Chris, you had some big disappointments, all within a real close time span.
did.
You lost your job, which was a great part of your life and
Yep.
something that gave you
And
great
how
joy.
am I going to make money?
And how am I going to pay for all these cancer treatments? And you've been single your whole life. Tell our viewers what else happened that was kind of catastrophic.
Yeah, I lost my mom. I'd been taking care of my mom for about 12 years, and she had been dealing with Parkinson's disease. And there again, I prayed for her every day. I laid hands on her, and God did a miraculous healing. It just wasn't in the physical realm of curing the Parkinson's disease. It took her out. But God did an amazing healing in the relationship between my mom and I, which had not been there before.
Right.
And just I saw her heart and her faith, and just, I mean, it was there was a huge healing. But I lost her, and then lost my job, and got this stage 4.
All within 3 months of each other,
3
right?
months. Yeah, 3 months apart. And so you're just thinking, what is going on? I mean, it's almost like, you know, the cartoon character that gets up and kind of shakes his head, you know.
Well, it's questioning. It's okay to question God, don't you think?
Oh,
That
yeah,
you
absolutely.
Are not necessarily challenging Him
Yeah.
or getting angry at Him in your case, but you're just like,
But
what?
being real, what are you doing?
Right.
You know, I think it's important for us to not just hide in those stained glass voices and use the right terminology. And, you know, there are times when you think, you know, especially, and like you said, I'm single. You're sitting there by yourself thinking, you know, yeah, sure. When you read the Bible, it doesn't gloss over the prayers and the statements. You know, you read through the Proverbs, you read through the Psalms, you read through the books. There were some people that kind of got up
in God's face.
in God's grill and said, "Hey, what are you doing?"
Yeah.
You know.
Right.
But I love that He knows it anyway. Why not be honest about it?
Right.
And
It's
He
not like we
does
can hide it
bring,
from Him.
Yeah. And even those times where, you know, like I used to call them spiritual push-ups, where I'd take this and go, "Okay, Lord, this is yours," you know. And
yeah, it's good. Do you feel like you've grown a lot in the last 3.5 years?
Wow, huge, huge. And yet, there's still that nagging thing in the back of my head that, gosh, I've wasted a lot of time, because, like I said, it becomes so clarifying. You think, so now what I try to do in the morning before I even get out of bed, before I even assess how do I feel, is, Lord, thank you for this day, and how do you want me to glorify you in it? You've been with me over at the hospital, over at the cancer center. It's amazing how many people God brings along for me
that you witness to.
To witness to, to share with, sometimes to cry with, sometimes just to put my arms around them and to cry with, or to just be with them there. Some of them you can't hug because physically it would be painful to them. And so you just kind of grab their hands and pray with them, or laugh. That's a biggie. That's a biggie.
Chris, what does the future look like for you? And I know that's a ridiculous question because I don't know what the future looks like for me in 5 minutes. You don't ever know.
Yeah, we don't.
But
None of
what
us.
physically are they telling you at this point? What do the blood tests look like? Where are you?
My last several blood tests have really looked
Grim.
But God.
But God.
And
but God.
But
That's
God.
it. But God.
But God. And He uses my medical team. He uses people in my life. He uses encouragement. If all of us should be living our days like this is the last day. And what a beautiful day. What a glorious, just the gifts we have. Say the things you want to say. Do the things you want to do. Do them now. Don't wait.
Do you have anything that's not been done? Do you have anything left undone at this point? With relatives, with friends, with me?
I don't. You know that $10 that.
Yeah. Do I still owe you that? Okay.
I can honestly say that there is no enmity between me and another person that I'm aware of, which is a biggie.
Is that intentional? Is it something that you've worked?
That's intentional.
Okay.
Yeah. And again, that was kind of the case even before 3 years ago. But I think one of the things I'm trying to do, and Bill Colley, whom you had on not too long ago, and my pastor, Richard Lord, it's just been really great. But I'm trying to get things set out, like, just the regular things we should all have done, like your will and your living will and your directive and things like that.
Setting our households in order.
That's right.
Right.
But I am concentrating on life. I'm
Good.
I'm concentrating on Jesus Christ
Yes.
and on God the Father, and I am just glad to be here.
Well, there's nothing left to say. Thank you so much, Chris, for being here with us today, for sharing your story, your journey, and for encouraging us so much.